right, everybody. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Blazer Victory Podcast. John Duncan here, and I am joined by one of my co-hosts, Jimmy Marion. Darian Smith is out today, but we'll be back next week. And guys, we are here to discuss a W on the road to start American Athletic Conference play as UAB takes down UTSA in the historic Convo 78-76. But before we get started on that, this game recap episode and all game recap episodes are brought to you by Cahaba Brewing Company. And guys, if you missed it, if you didn't get to go down and taste the Holiday Blonde, they are actually out of the Holiday Blonde. It was so popular, but we thank you to all of our listeners that went down there and tried that beer. It was still amazing. Still probably one of my favorite beers
I saw
ever.
you take some home, so if any of our listeners want to get some, I think John still might have some at your house if you haven't drank all of it.
I've got one crowler, and that is for Darian. So Darian wasn't able to make it down, so I got one for him. But yeah, it was amazing. But all of their core beers are really awesome, especially the IPA, the regular blonde, and the pale ale and the lager. Like there's just so many good options at in the tap room in Cahaba. So if you have not checked them out, definitely go down to Cahaba Brewing Company and check out their tap room, or in a local supermarket, you can pick up a 6-pack of Cahaba. But thank you again to Cahaba for sponsoring the podcast for this year. And also, thank you to Brad for shout out to Brad for making a video intro for our podcast on YouTube. So make sure that if you're watching us on YouTube right now, you like and subscribe. Ain't that right, Big Jim? Subscribe and like. It's a Big Jim said that we need to start doing that.
Yeah.
So definitely like and subscribe and help share us with YouTube. We hope that you like to see us. I know every single one of you just we're coming from the audio side, but actually putting a face to a voice helps. So, but yeah, Jimmy, at this game, man, 78-76. It wasn't always the prettiest of games, but UAB found a way to start off conference play in their first ever game of the AAC on the road and somehow find a way to get the dub. So what's your initial reaction?
Yeah, where they say a win's a win, right? Especially when you get a
Yes.
road win. And you and I were talking before the game, and we were talking about just how vital it was for UAB basketball to get off to a good start in the American Athletic Conference. And part of that's because when you look at the schedule and conference play, 5 out of the first 6 games, if memory serves me right, are against opponents that are ranked 100 or worse in KenPom. And then you follow that up with the 6 next opponents, 5 of which are ranked inside the top 100 in the KenPom rankings. And so, and just for all the reasons we normally talk about, is getting some momentum. Students are about to get back on campus. You want to start 1-0. You want to build that momentum because we've got a big game. All of them are big, but we have a big one, right, with Memphis coming to Bartow Arena at the end of this month. And you just want to continue to build that intrigue around UAB basketball to get Bartow Arena rocking again. But, yeah, whenever you can go on the road and conference and start with a W is absolutely critical.
Definitely. And the game was far from perfect. I mean, you saw missed dunks, turnover after turnover. UAB set a season high 20 turnovers in this game in San Antonio. But, give kudos to the guys and Andy Kennedy and the staff to finding a way to, get out of the convo with a dub. And I mean, really, 2 players in particular played a hell of a game. And, you've got to look at Yaks at first, who we talked about last week, who's really finding himself and getting more comfortable the more he plays out there on the court, and just getting dang near almost freaking taking over his career high with 23 points. He had 24 against UNC Asheville. But you
You know
look at
what's weird
Buddy.
before you jump off Yaks is I thought like early in the contest there was like a few subtle moments where I thought that confidence was lacking a little bit. And there was one
Yeah.
moment in particular where in recent games we've seen Yaks do a good job of collecting the rebound, which he's a beast at, and then taking the ball down the court. And there was one moment in last night's contest in which he had tried to get he got the rebound, and then he tried to get the ball over to Eric Gaines, and it was almost stolen. And then, interestingly enough, Eric Gaines didn't pass it back to him. I think he drew a foul, and it was right before one of the media timeouts. But I looked at that little moment, and I was thinking early on, I'm like, oh no, I'm seeing some hesitancy, some reservation, what's going on? And then just he erupted, right? Hitting all the
Yep.
threes and the confidence that he exhibited in that contest. That's the kind of yaks that we've seen in recent weeks. And these statistics that he's putting up are unreal. Like they're honestly unreal. With him getting near double doubles in just the first half alone, right?
Nearly a triple double, yeah.
And he's posting on social media. He's basically saying like, "Hey, I'm going to get that triple double." And I was thinking about that last night, man. It's like, what's more likely to happen first? Do you think that Eric Gaines is going to get that triple double this season? Or you think that Yaks is going to get that triple double this season? Because one of them is going to get a triple double. Eric has had, obviously, he's got points and assists, but he can rack up those steals. And then Yaks has got the same thing going on with the blocks. Which Blazer's going to get the triple double first in the American Athletic play?
Oh, that's a good question. I just hope that both of them end up doing it before the season's over with. But Jimmy, you hinted at the 3-point shooting, 5 of 6 from down from the 3-point line, and that's something crazy to think about. That he had only made one prior to this game. Was he like 1 for 8 or something?
1 for 9, and he was 12 of 31 in junior college this past season. So he hit 12
mm,
all of last year in JUCO, and he started off this year 1 of 9, and to go 5 of 6 is unreal.
Yeah, and all 5 of those 3-point shots came at pivotal points in this game. Because we know, we didn't get to preview this game with UTSA, but we know they make the most 3-point shots in the league in the AAC.
Yeah.
So we knew that we're gonna have to score get some threes to catch up to the UTSA, and UAB did that, going 11 of 20 as a team from the 3-point line. That's 55%.
But think about that, John, as like on the note of Yak shooting threes, is how much that opens things up offensively, right? So we've
Yes.
talked about how teams defensively are really closing in the paint, right? And we're seeing difficulty not just scoring in the paint, but getting the ball inside. There's just
Right.
so many bodies. And we've had some players that, whether it be like a Daniel Ortiz or Eric Gaines at times, or Butta, who's shooting at a high efficiency from three, who have opened things up. Tony's had a couple of games in which he's hit multiple threes, which has been good. But for Yaks to be able to do that from the post position, I think is going to be very important. And not to get too far ahead, but there are some teams that we're going to play, one of which was on TV before us last night, in FAU, that plays 4 guards. They have their one big. And I'm just thinking about that potential matchup. And that guy on FAU, who I'm sure we'll preview and talk about, is unreal, and how important he is to FAU. But just the ability to kind of pull him out some, you know what I'm saying, defensively, and Yaks to be able to hit threes, when he is guarding Yaks, I think is going to be big. So just on that point, it's going to be huge if UAB is to have a successful American Athletic Conference season, for Yaks to be able to extend the floor.
Yes, I agree 100%, Jimmy. And you look at kind of like, a Butta Johnson's performance this game with the mid-range clutch after shot, clutch shot, clutch shot. Yeah, with the Yaks being a 3-point threat, like teams are going to have to stretch out to defend him, and that allows for that middle lane to kind of become more open. And that's exactly what we saw last night in San Antonio with Butta, whether it's Butta, whether it's Ortiz. The guys are starting to make shots at pivotal moments in the ball game. Eric's performance, he kind of had an off night. The missed dunk was kind of the highlight of, like, I don't know what happened there. He might have been just trying to do too much. If you're Andy, but you saw Andy's reaction right after he missed it, like, come on, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna need Eric to play, and we give kudos to Eric outside of this game. I thought, or we all three have talked about like how he has stepped up, and you see that assist to turnover ratio was going well. But yeah, last night 6 assists to 3 turnovers. I mean, basically a missed dunk is a turnover if you ask me.
Yeah.
So we're going to need Eric to kind of get back to where he was before the San Antonio trip.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're talking about Eric because he certainly has some good moments. And last night was not his best game, but he has been playing really well as of late. He's been playing the kind of basketball that, I'll start with me and speak for myself, that we talked about early in the season, that we wanted to see Eric be a facilitator because we know he can. There were moments, was it Christian Coleman? I think that he had a really nice dump off pass in the post late in last night's contest that made an
Yes.
easy basket for Christian Coleman. So it's that. For those of us that have been watching UAB for a while, we're just accustomed to having that guard that's making things easier for others. And he has shown the ability to do that at times, pick and roll situations with JD, whether it be early this year or last year. And we want to continue to see more of that. And statistically, we're still, 15 games, roughly into this year. So we have a relatively decent sample size. And when you look at EG versus a shot maker and shot taker versus a shot facilitator. Some statistics that I've been tracking is just when you look at Eric Gaines, when he attempts, not makes, when he attempts less than 10 field goals in a game, UAB is undefeated this season. Now,
Wow.
conversely, when he attempts more than 10 shots, we're 500 at 5-5. So that's one thing I've been tracking. And also, you talked about that assist to turnover ratio. Over this last 5-game winning streak, EG has totaled 40 assists and 12 turnovers. That's not
Wow.
too shabby at all. That's really good. So that's averaging 8 assists and just under 2.5 turnovers a game. In the 9 games prior, EG, so again, 4 additional contests, so 9 games total, he had 32 assists and 26 turnovers, right?
Mm.
So you're talking about, instead of averaging 8 assists and 2.5 turnovers, you're talking about averaging 3.5 assists and 2.9 turnovers per game. So in my opinion, one of the key takeaways, and it won't be a shock to our audience, is that EG is extremely talented, extremely athletic. He can shoot the ball. He showed that last year at UAB. But in my opinion, UAB is more successful when EG is facilitating the ball, getting others involved, and when he's, obviously lowering those turnovers, but when he's doing those things, UAB has statistically produced at a higher level. So.
Yeah, that great points and great stats to back that up, Jimmy. You also look at a guy like JV and Davis.
Mhm.
When JD, like, it really has been like when JD struggles and Eric struggles, like most of the time this team just can't get over the hump. But it was a good sign to last night in San Antonio to have some other guys like Yaks, continue to step up, or have Bud step up. And you look at too, the free throw shooting is still good. They weren't perfect, but they were 15 of
Yeah.
18 from the line for 83%, which is really good.
Yeah.
Because this team really does rely on getting to the free throw line. Shooting. If you look back at the UNC Asheville, they don't win that game without
Yeah.
almost perfect free throw shooting. So that's something going to be we're going to have to monitor too going forward. Even this Sunday, as South Florida comes into Bartow, can they keep up the hot free throw shooting? And it's just something to monitor. Now, what is, I know UTSA had a 7-footer. We know FAU's got a 7-footer down low. We just talked about them. But when you get doubled up points in the paint, 32 to 16,
Mm-hmm.
I mean that is a cause of concern. I mean, we're grateful that the outside shooting was so well last night. Shooting over 50%, and the mid range was so good. But I mean, if you can't get it down low, to whether it's JD, Yaks, whoever, then this team's going to have some problems. Especially looking against FAU in the next week.
Yeah, that was arguably UAB's worst performance in the paint on the offensive end all season long. 16 points, you
Yep.
said it already was a season low for the Blazers. And that's roughly half of what UAB is getting points in the paint per game this season. And obviously, you mentioned that UTSA, to make matters worse, doubled UAB up in this performance. So that was certainly bad. I thought on the defensive glass, UAB had a solid outing. 32 defensive rebounds. They were plus 10 in that category and plus 14 in total rebounds, which was a season high when you look at that differential. So I thought UAB in the defensive glass was good. You even look at a guy like Javian Davis. I'm going off memory here, John, but I think Javian Davis had 8 rebounds, if memory serves me right. And he didn't play, 17 minutes, 20 minutes maybe. So
19, yeah.
yeah, so he played 19 minutes, and so, he didn't have a full outing. He was dealing with foul trouble, but I've talked about in some prior episodes that I was hoping to see Javian Davis be more aggressive on the defensive glass, and I think he did that. I know he did that against UTSA, so that was good. But yeah, to your point, the 11 made threes, basically more than double what UAB averages in a game, was able to offset not just points in the paint, but the turnovers that you mentioned earlier. And it was difficult for me to watch last night just how challenging it is for us to get the ball down low to Javian Davis. Like, it's one thing we've talked about is how Javian Davis has had to get accustomed to getting double teamed. I mean, that's difficult. He hasn't really had to deal with that in his entire Division I career, and he's seen so many double teams this year because what we did in the Bradley game right off the bat was we ran our offense through him, and then teams looked at that and they said, okay, we're going to stop that, and you're going to have to do something else. And at times we've struggled with whatever something else is in terms of a scoring output. But when JD is involved, when JD takes, at least we talked about Eric Gaines and the 10 plus or minus shot attempts earlier. When JD attempts at least 5 shots, UAB is 8-2 this year. And when when JD makes at least 3 shots, 3 field goals, it doesn't seem that difficult, right? When he makes at least 3 field goals, UAB is 6-1 this year. So what does that mean is, like, I understand the emphasis of us wanting to get the ball through JD, and we should. Statistically, we should. And because he is a very good, AK talks about him at angles and how he's able to position himself, and he's an excellent offensive rebounder this year. So I think I heard in the broadcast, potentially I may be misremembering it, but I thought they had stated that Javian Davis was the best offensive rebounder statistically in conference right now. So anyways, JD is going to be extremely important. And ultimately, to your point, last night, even AK said it was an anomaly for UAB statistically. And for some of those reasons, we were able to still come out of this game with a win.
Yeah, and Jimmy, even, getting the ball down to JD and also just playing defense and rebounding on defense, all of that involves communicating. So if Andy's listening, he's agreeing, like, this team still just struggles communicating with each other. There were a couple instances last night in the convo that, I mean, multiple guys, same team, UAB, going for a rebound and it going out of bounds. Or
Ortiz.
I
remember that one.
That was terrible. And then there was another one that they got the ball. UTSA had just scored, and then it was early on in the game, and they got the ball in bounds, but they weren't communicating. And the UTSA defender just slapped it out of his hand, and it went out of bounds off of a UAB guy. It's just times like these, like, are moments like that. Like, if you find a way to have effective communication on the court, you avoid instances like those. Those weren't forced turnovers. A lot of the times they were just unforced, careless with the basketball, not communicating.
Right.
So, I say all that to say we're 14 games into the season. Still have a whole conference play to go, and then the conference tournament in March. So there's time for this team to figure it out, but they need to start working on communication, and Andy knows that. Coach Cross knows that. I hope it comes. I hope the light bulb clicks at some point before March for this team.
Yeah. One thing I didn't want to not mention was when you started getting those text messages from me last night during the game. How many texts did you get in a row that just said another one? Another one. There was a moment there with the turnovers, like late in the game, where it was like, what is going on? I had wrote down in my in-game notes, Ortiz had hit a 3 to put UAB up by 4. So it was 68-64. And on the next defensive possession, there was a rotation issue, and Tony was going out to the 3-point line in the corner. and just landed injured. He injured the UTSA player and gave him 3 free throws. He only hit 2, but then EG's coming up the court and gets stripped at half court. UTSA gets a layup. Ortiz misses a jumper, and then JD picks up his 5th foul, like 20 feet away from the basket, reaching Ivy Curry, who is really good, who came off
Yeah,
the
he
bench for
is.
them, and like he's the guy that left and then came back to UTSA. And then we went to the under 4-minute timeout, 68-68, and I was very nervous. I don't know if that's when the timing of when Butta hit his shot that started the 8-0 or the 10-0 run, whatever it was. It was the and one opportunity, right? So that's when he came around and he got fouled, and I thought that was like an NBA continuation call that they gave him, and I was like, hell, I'll
That
take
means we'll
it.
take it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'll take that. And then Butta, you mentioned him earlier, like just I mean, was it 8-0 run or 10-0 run? I saw someone say 10-0
I think
run.
10-0. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about Butta in numerous contests, just his ability to hit shots in late game situations. He's another guy. I was talking to Natalie this morning because she didn't see the end of the game, and so I showed it to her. And it's really cool how efficient Butta is shooting the ball. Like you think about our struggles, he's still shooting around 40+% from 3 this year. And really, I think that some of his shooting percentages are down because there were a few games in which just nobody could hit anything, and it was like late in the game, and he was tossing up like contested like 3-pointers at the end of the contest or whatever. Obviously, he's dealt with an injury or two that was a little bit nagging there in the middle, but the skill set that he has for them to call his number and for the other team to know that they're calling number 24 again and again and again, and they're going to put the ball in his hands and he's going to convert over and over and over again, is just really fun to watch. And I had to remind myself he's in his 2nd year at UAB. Like you would think this guy's been here like 3 years and there was a COVID year and he has all this experience. Like he's halfway through his 2nd year, and I'm just like super pleased with him. Obviously, we talk about all the time being from the state of Alabama, pride, in UAB. And, there has been, we were even talking about it last night, like defensively, like kind of some eyes on, Butta, like, is he still dealing with injury, this or that? But who cares? When you're going to hit shots like that offensively, like who cares? Like just give 24 the ball, and hopefully he's able to build upon that as UAB tries to keep this momentum going forward.
Definitely. And I was going to say, just to kind of wrap up, like, I can't even blame the 20 turnovers and the kind of the indecisiveness or a lack of communication on the court at times. Because I didn't even tell you this, but I had to brew a cup of coffee for that 8 o'clock tip.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the game, or midway through the second half, I was like, crap, I'm not tired. So I had to pop some melatonin to get me tired. So it's like, do I want to stay up? Do I want to go to bed? You know what I'm saying? So I say all that to say, hey, the guys will figure it out. Like Jimmy said, we're not even 15 games into the season. It ebbs and flows, and hell, UAB's on a freaking 5-game winning streak, heading into Bartow this Sunday, and a decent South Florida team. This isn't a sub 200. In fact, I think they were. Let me refresh Ken Palm. I think they're above UAB and Ken Palm right now.
Yeah, while John's looking at that, South Florida hired the coach that was at Kennesaw State, and then the assistant from Alabama replaced him at Kennesaw State, and he took at least one player, I believe his name's Chris Youngblood. He may have taken more than one player from Kennesaw State with him to South Florida. And for those of you, I was in Daytona Beach last year. South Florida was in that, November multi-team event. Then they're a different team and a different roster than they were then. But to John's point, UTSA, from a ratings perspective, is got to be the lowest ranked team that we're going to play in the rest of the American. Every team that we face from this point forward is going to be ranked higher. USF is not one of the higher ranked teams, but they're no pushover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking at the Ken Palm, South Florida's 144 and UAB's back at 168. So ranked higher on Ken Palm. So they're not going to be a slouch. So we need everybody to come down to Bartow, 2 p.m. this Sunday afternoon. I hope that religious organization shows up and goes to the student section to help cheer on the team because UAB is going to need it
Yeah.
this Sunday, and hopefully go to 2-0 in conference play before that big trip to Boca the next weekend. But
First
guys,
home game in the American Athletic Conference. Like, it doesn't matter who we're playing at this point. Luckily, we're not playing Memphis quite yet. We still got a little bit of time to kind of get ready for that game. But yeah,
yes.
just bring somebody with you. I know it's Sunday. Heck, we went to 8 o'clock service last week. I was home by like 9:30. Like, I'll be juiced, ready to go. So hopefully, bring yourself, bring the fam. Do what you got to do to get there. Regardless of how the season has gone thus far, 5-game winning streak. John said it. First game, an opportunity to go 2-0 in the American Athletic Conference. We hope to definitely see everybody there.
Definitely. And Patreon supporters, you probably saw in your feed today, we did have a really good over 40-minute discussion about the quarterback Jalen Kitna um, committing to UAB, and just the overall really good discussion with me, Jimmy, and Darian. So if you are not a subscriber, go to patreon.com/blazerpod and check it out and become a member. But Jimmy, go ahead and send us out.
Hey, see y'all on Sunday. Blazer Nation, just blaze.